As Donald Trump handcuffs himself to the Resolute desk and pretends as though there was election fraud, which led to Joe Biden winning over Trump. Of course, that's unfounded, no evidence of that. Luckily, there have been some Republicans who have come out to essentially disagree with Trump and say that there's no evidence of election fraud. So let me be clear. We've announced here at TYT that Joe Biden is the president-elect. He has won this election fair and square. And here is what Representative Adam Kinzinger had to say about it. He says, if you have legit concerns about fraud, present evidence and take it to court. Stop spreading debunked misinformation. This is getting insane. He's not the only one. You also have Governor Larry Hogan, who's a Republican from Maryland. He says there's no defense for the president's comments tonight, undermining our democratic process. And Senator Mitt Romney from Utah, who is also a Republican, of course, says Trump is wrong to say the election was rigged, corrupt, and stolen. Trump's claim damages the cause of freedom here and around the world and recklessly inflames destructive and dangerous passions. And Senator Pat Toomey says there's simply no evidence anyone has shown me of any widespread corruption or fraud. The president's speech last night was very disturbing to me because he made very, very serious allegations without any evidence to support it. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't Republicans who are defending Trump and his ridiculous allegations. In fact, let's take a look at this mashup.
The worst in the country right now is Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where they're not allowing the election observers in.
There's the process of observing an election that's being violated. Philadelphia elections are crooked as a snake. Why are they shutting people out? Because they don't want people to see what they're doing.
There's a reason they're defying the law. The reason you don't want observers there is because you're doing something you don't want to be observed.
President Trump won this election, so everyone who's listening, do not be quiet.
The Attorney General this afternoon issued an order that federal agents can carry guns in the pursuit of people who are breaking the law. That's a signal.
They did it and they violated the law. Nobody can testify to the legitimacy of what their counting was. Oh, what, a do-over in that state?
It is partisan, it is political, and it is lawless. And we're seeing this pattern in Democratic city after Democratic city.
They don't abide by the law and they don't allow observers in as the law calls for. Should they then invalidate this?
Well, I think everything should be on the table.
You take them back. You say flatly, any precinct that we were not able to observe, strip those votes out, do not count them because they're by definition corrupt.
All right, very powerful.
No, not very powerful, very unhinged, an absolute lunatic, someone who has completely lost his mind. I'm referring to Newt Gingrich's comments there, which Sean Hannity thinks are very powerful. The lawsuits that the Trump campaign have filed are so frivolous and so ridiculous that federal judges who are appointed by Republicans are getting increasingly frustrated and irritable by the situation. I wanna highlight one specific example, and there are many to be sure. So a federal judge in Pennsylvania where Trump holds an increasingly, well, at this point was an increasingly small lead, dismissed a Trump campaign lawsuit alleging that Philadelphia officials are not allowing Republican election observers sufficient access during the ballot tabulation process. When Judge Paul Diamond of the US District Court of Pennsylvania pressed a Trump campaign lawyer on whether Republican observers are currently present at the counting site, the attorney responded, get a load of this, there's a non-zero number of people in the room.
I love it.
Asked once more to provide a clear answer, the Trump campaign attorney said yes. I'm sorry, Diamond responded. Then what's your problem?
No, guys, that's one of my favorite quotes of all time. There's a non-zero number of people in the room.
Unbelievable.
So look, I want to break this down for you guys. So first they came with nonsense. Oh, there's wagons, there's sacks, there's Sharpies. They're just throwing out random words. Every one of those has been debunked, so they stopped talking about them because it just got embarrassing. It's not remotely true. The Republicans stopped talking about it. Louis Gohmert interviewed today, partly by Michael Schur, partly by JD Durkin, 2 different interviews, asked, okay, what is your evidence of fraud? You're down here in Philly, you're talking about fraud. He's like, well, I don't have any, but in past elections, there's been fraud. Wait, what does that have to do with this election, even if it were true? He's like, well, you're living in a Pollyanna world. Wait, you're the one who just said there was fraud, and when I asked you what the evidence is, you gave me none. That sounds like a Pollyanna world. Okay, so they started with that. Now, their only claim, really, that's outstanding is this one. And it's not outstanding, the court's already ruled on it. And their claim was, we're not getting meaningful access. You remember this from days ago. And as soon as I saw that phrase, I told you guys on air, wait, that means they do have access. Meaningful access is not a thing. They put that adjective in there to make it sound like they're not in the room. Then Sean Hannity came on the air and lied through his teeth all last night. Those were some of the interviews that you saw there. In the longer versions of the interviews, he kept saying like, they won't allow the Republican observers in the room. They won't allow them. You got to throw, and that's why they're talking about a redo. He wants to redo the entire election in Pennsylvania because Republican observers were not in the room. That is why the judge asked, so were there Republican observers in the room? That's when the lawyer says there's a non-zero number of people in the room. And he's like, yeah, so that means they're in the room. He's like, yes. I told you, of course there's observers in the room. Then they got more desperate. They're like, well, yeah, fine, there's non-zero people in the room, but are they close enough? So they're 25 feet away, we want them to be 6 feet away. The first judge that saw it was like, okay, fine, what difference does it make? Put them 6 feet within the balance, it doesn't matter. They're like, plus we want binoculars. Oh, all right, so then the court above them was like, no, that's not a law that you have to be 6 feet. They're in the room, it's okay, proceed, count, let's go, right? And for us, me, you, anyone who cares about the elections, 6 feet, 25 feet, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Can they see the ballots? They can see the ballots. By the way, it's not like the Democrats are 1 foot away and the Republicans are 25 feet away. They're both at the same place. So no. I want to 7 feet, 8 feet, 9 feet. So they're in the room. There's no question about it. So when you see Sean Hannity saying that there weren't Republican observers, it is a 100% lie, and he knows he's lying, and Fox News knows he's lying, and Ted Cruz knows he's lying, and Lindsey Graham and Newt Gingrich, they all know that they're lying, and they do it anyway, and they rile up their idiotic viewers who eat that stuff up. Oh, they won't they cheated. They wouldn't let the Republicans in the room. We gotta go to Philly. And now, of course, they caught somebody who went to Philly with weapons, okay? And so that's what Fox News is up to. Their reporters every once in a while say it before they get the memo to stop talking and saying facts. But on the ground in Philly, Fox News reporter said there is absolutely no evidence of fraud that has been presented by anyone. And then at night, Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity come on and they're like, oh, fraud, and then they lie. These court proceedings are not secret. They're not private. They're public. You can go read for yourself what was said in the court. And so the reality is there has been no allegation of actual fraud.
Yeah, and to your point, Cenk, I mean, you mentioned Lindsey Graham. Look, we've obviously had some pretty strong and harsh criticism against Lindsey Graham, especially since he's a sniveling, conniving, cowardly, feckless, self-interested narcissist who is willing to put our democratic process on the line for his own political agenda and political aspirations. But he has completely latched onto whatever messaging the Trump campaign demands of him. That was after he decided to remain silent in the beginning when Trump started claiming that there was electoral fraud happening. And now take a look at how absolutely disgusting and pathetic his messaging is after getting pressured by lowlives like Don Jr. to go along with their messaging. Watch.
I'm going to donate $500,000 tonight to President Trump's defense legal fund, so we'll have the resources to fight. The allegations of wrongdoing are earth-shattering. It makes the Carter warrant page application, Carter page warrant application look on the up and up.
Loser, absolute pathetic loser.
Earth-shattering. He said earth-shattering. The allegations of being 7 feet instead of 8 feet away. It's earth-shattering, earth-shattering. What an unbelievable liar. Lindsey Graham is exactly why people despise politicians. So now look, you look at every single thing that they tried. In every case, it's comical. In Georgia, they're like, oh, this is an outrageous thing that they're doing. How many votes does it affect? By the way, it's not, and the court said no. How many? 53 votes. Okay, even if it were true, it would be entirely irrelevant. All of these elections are decided by thousands of votes. So they have absolutely nothing. And the longer these networks wait to call it, the more it seems like it's a legitimate question as to whether there's something wrong going on.
I mean, even the New York Post has the right take on what's going on right now. Let me give you two headlines. Headline number one, Donald Trump Jr. calls for total war in clueless tweet. Headline number two, downcast Trump makes baseless election fraud claims in White House address. It's amazing. It's amazing when even the New York Post is better than Lindsey Graham, and that's saying something. And with that said, look, what is the? Of course, Trump wants to try to steal this election, right? But what is the impact of the kind of rhetoric we're hearing from Trump and his loyalists? Well, it leads to violence. It leads to the supporters showing up to vote counting locations with the intention of intimidating people, with the intention of stopping the count. And here's an example out of Pennsylvania. Apologies, that video was actually from Michigan, but there was a foiled terrorist plot in Philly just last night where two QAnon supporters, QAnon believers, were showing up to a vote counting location armed, and luckily authorities were able to arrest them before something serious happened. We'll give you more details on that story later in the show. But it has real consequences. That's the point that I'm trying to make here.
Yeah, so that in Michigan, they were chanting stop the count, as you saw there. Later, they pleaded with Michigan to keep counting when Biden took the lead in Michigan. So in Pennsylvania, it got more absurd. They said, stop the count, stop the count. Biden took the lead. They're like, keep counting, keep counting. It's a joke. I mean, they're a joke, but it got worse. How could it get worse? Now they're saying we need a recount of Pennsylvania. So now they're chanting count twice, count twice. Okay, they're not actually, to be accurate, they didn't send the supporters back out there to chant count twice. They might have reached a threshold of absurdity, but that is their contention in court. And what's great, and that's why Jonathan Turley, who's a legal expert supporting Donald Trump, supported him in his impeachment testimony, came out this morning. He's like, you're ruining your case because now you're going to go to court and tell them to do you're going to ask for a recount. But earlier you went to court and asked them to stop counting. So they're going to ask you, which one is it, Mr. Trump? Do you want them to stop counting? Do you want them to keep counting? Or do you want them to count twice? Please make up your mind. Gee, I wonder who's right and who's wrong. Gee, I wonder who won and who lost. And it's just humoring Republicans is unacceptable. You have to call out lies for what they are, and that is clearly what's going on here. Because guys, the most dangerous thing that's still left on the table is leaving a question mark around this election for no reason when Biden has clearly won Pennsylvania and Nevada at a bare minimum. And then the right wing starts nonsense like, oh, there's fraud or et cetera, and all the things that we just explained to you. And then as soon as there's an issue, the way the cable news drives the rest of the news is, well, now we're debating it. Now MSNBC says this and Fox News says that. And all of a sudden it's debatable. And the minute it becomes debatable, the Republicans win the debate because the Democrats cower, the media cowers. And I'm worried that we're in the middle of that now. So for God's sake, just have clarity. Yeah. And so it doesn't take much. I mean, why isn't every network reading the same things that we just read you? Where Republican lawyers say there's a non-zero number of people in the room. Why aren't they showing a clip of Sean Hannity pretending there wasn't Republicans in the room, and then playing that quote and calling Sean Hannity what he is, a liar. They're afraid, and they're worried about Republican reaction. That is political correctness. That is not factual correctness. Do your job.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.